Hello, everyone. We have Chris Lawrence, who is the Regional Manager for Americas and Europe, and he will be speaking about studying law at the University of Sydney. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you now, Chris.
Great, thanks, Cassie. I can see we've just got a small number of folks here. If you guys have got questions that you want particularly answered, just throw them in the Q&A box, not the chat box, and we'll have a look at them straight away. Being such a small number, I think we can field them as we go. All right, so just a little bit about the University of Sydney. What we do in Australia is we acknowledge the country on which we're standing and teaching and living in terms of the First Nations peoples in Australia. It's something I don't see done in Canada as much, but it's very common in Australia. So we would very much like to acknowledge the leaders of the Gadigal Nation, the Eora Nation, the lands on which the University of Sydney are based, even though we teach in many different places, and acknowledge their leaders past, current and emerging. Our law program is very interesting in that we were such an unimportant little colony right at the edge of the British Empire. We were established later than Canada and other colonies and other parts of the world, and people didn't really care what we did. And one of the things that we did is we were one of the first universities in the world to accept and graduate women, and law was one of the first subjects to do that. And we're very proud of that. It's easy to be progressive when no one cares what you do, but we were still at that leading edge, so we're very pleased about that. Law students are very keen on questions about, how many High Court justices you have and so forth. And of the 7 prime ministers that the University of Sydney have helped create in terms of their education, 6 of them have come through our law program, which I think is very interesting. Another statistic that's not on this page that I find very interesting is only 50% of our law graduates ever practice law. And that's not because we're a crap law school or a crap uni. It's because law is a very good base degree for going off and doing a whole lot of different things, not the least of which is politics. If you guys know anything about moot courts or mooting, you'll know about the Jessup Moot Cup, and we do extremely well with this. We go into these international competitions and we really do well. Our students are well renowned for kicking ass in this particular discipline. We have our own moot court on campus, which is used regularly, and it's set up like a courtroom, and students get to ply their trade, as it were. Most students from Canada would come do the Juris Doctor with us, which means that they're going to be studying with us for 2 or 3 years, depending on how much law they had in their undergraduate degree. And it's a good opportunity to broaden your horizons or make that sea change into doing law, which a lot of students do. So we're very pleased that Canadian students do come through and do this. It adds a different flavour, it adds a different element to how we do law. Oh, goodness me. The word professor is used differently in different places. To be a professor in Australia means you're head of a department. So to have 30 professors means we're a big faculty. Also, there's a lot of academic work being done in that list in front of you. One of the most interesting, I think, is human rights. And there's also a lot of stuff done with international law. It seems to be having a mind of its own, taking off. 14th in the world for the 2021 QS rankings for law. We do it well. I will just go through, skip through that. So the JD structure is 3 years qualifying law degrees for graduates. So it means that at the end of it, you can apply to become a lawyer. First year is compulsory units, second year is compulsory units, and the third year, you get to have a bit of a play around with what you want to do. If you've again got a lot of law experience, you're still doing a lot of the compulsory units and the final year, but the first 2 years are more compressed.
Chris, Can I interrupt you for just 1 second? It sounds like your audio is kind of like going in and out. I'm not sure if something is blocking it. Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Katie. Let's switch over to headphones because they're more reliable. Thanks, Katie, and please let me know if there's any problems with audio. International focus exchange programs, offshore opportunities. You can read that list there as well as I can. And it hasn't been announced yet, but we've got one coming up with Canada as well, which is very exciting. Both running common law systems based on the British system is a really big help for Canadian students. There is a lot of similarity there, but again, you get to look at it from a different perspective. Experiential learning, law reform research support program, law clinics, and as we mentioned before, mooting, Sydney University Law Society, which is one of the most active societies on campus. They do a lot of work with juvenile justice and mentoring system and refugee language tutoring program. Our law students really do like to say they have a heart and a mind. Lawyers are sometimes viewed as being soulless creatures. Nothing could be further from the truth, of course. And if you look at the pro bono work that our students do and the support work that our students do, you'll come to realize that very quickly. We're very proud of our law students. The elective curriculum, JD students can select up to 4 advanced learning master's units, 6,000 level, which is the top level. Wide selection of specializations, exposure to industry, international experts, professional development, and so on and so forth. That picture on the right, A, it is a pretty picture, but B, it's also our law library. And that room there is a light well, so it's underground, but it's got a bit going upstairs and showing you how it hopefully allows students to study under natural light during daylight. Which is a nice touch. We want people to be connected. Graduate full-time employment rates. The University of Sydney, I think it's ranked like 4th in the world anyway, but our law school also does extremely well. You can see the law school average, the Sydney University average, and the national average. Our law students are very much in demand. But again, they're not always working as lawyers. That's something to remember. There's another picture of that same light well above and this study area below. The law students get very cross because students from all the other parts of the university try and get in there and get those spots. An odd noise comes through. I hope that's not affecting anything. Admissions based on your tertiary grade average for a complete bachelor's degree, or if you've done a master's, your master's as well. Tertiary grade guide, credit range, 70% passing mark or 50%. Obviously, there are different GPA scales. We can work that out. But basically, if you've been a good student, you shouldn't have too much trouble. Law school scholarships. This is something I've always asked about. There are a couple of different ones there. The most, one of the most generous is the Sydney Law School's Dean's Scholarship. I've interviewed a couple of those students in the past. My goodness, they're magnificent. And we've had a couple of Canadian students get those as well. And we're very pleased that those students have chosen to come through and study with us. Accreditation. I'm sure you'd be understanding that this is something that takes a couple of steps. If you're wanting to practice law in Canada or the US, there will be other exams beyond that. But the Canadian and American students and German students that I have spoken to have said that the Sydney educational experience prepares them extremely well for these. I've never had a student say, gee, I wasn't well prepared for the accreditation going to whichever country it was. And that includes the US, which has a very different, well, not very different, a meaningfully different system, whereas the Canadian system is closer. But you do have to check with your jurisdiction before you make any decisions. I think you'll find this fairly similar across a lot of different law degrees. That's actually our moot court in the picture in the middle there. It is about reasoning, it is about evaluating, it is about problem solving, decision making and argument. this is part of the reason that our law graduates are in such demand in other areas. There are a lot of other places that you can learn different skills, but the skills you're learning in a law degree in general, and very specifically in our law degree, is about communication, reasoning, and evaluating problem solving. And you would understand very quickly those skills are extremely well transferable into government, into the corporate sector, into NGOs. He's retired fairly recently, but head legal counsel for UNICEF under the United Nations in New York was one of our alumni. And the guy who drafted the UN Charter was one of our graduates, also one of our former prime ministers. So the Sydney Law School really has helped shape the country of Australia, but also some of the global stuff that goes on as well. You'll often meet a USyd alum around any of those places. Now, I've rushed through that, I know, but there's only a few of you here. If you've got questions, here's a good chance to just throw them into the chat box, or sorry, the Q&A box, my apology, the Q&A box, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, hopefully that I can, because I don't work for the law school, I work for the central part of the university, but the more general questions I should be able to answer. Guys, fire away.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll give it a few minutes, 1 minute, to see if anybody says anything.
But I'll be going back to my booth later. If you're a bit shy, you can go and do that. Caddy, can you explain to them how to do that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go back to the virtual fair, Chris will be in the booth to answer any questions you might have. And I saw just one came in. So the entry requirements for the JD program specifically.
It's all about your undergraduate degree. If you have had no legal experience, we're just looking at your GPA. It's usually a credit average higher, 65%, something like that, depending on the GPA system used at your university. They'll ask you for a CV and they'll ask you for some sort of documentation explaining why you want to do the program, and you'll be assessed based on that. It's not complicated. I don't know. A lot of the American schools, they just make it so difficult and so many hoops. And sometimes people see our system and say, why is it so easy? What's wrong with your university? Why aren't you making sweat? Why aren't you making me sweat blood? It's fairly simple. If you've got good grades and a good reason to be there, we're not going to make life difficult for you. I hope
no LSAT.
Yeah, no LSAT. No, we've had a look at it in a number of years, and we've always moved away from it. We've just found that it's not necessary to have an LSAT to predict whether someone's going to be a good lawyer or not. We have looked at LSAT a few times, but we've never undertaken it. Thanks, Molly. That's a great question. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Molly. Okay, awesome. So yes, if you guys do have more questions, I think Chris will be around for a little bit more.
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Cheers now, everybody.
Bye.